Swear to God, Uncle Sam was just doing this, conjuring up something to make sure he dropped something in all the stockings of the military members that are going to be affected by this grand policy, which I will say many of us will agree is only showing how this is lining up and kind of going towards the trend of we are hurting pretty bad. But let's go over this grand policy, as there's been two major announcements. Say for both of them, I promise you they are worth it to see and look at. They say background and outline to reference A through D. All sailors incur an 8-year military service obligation. Any portion of which that is not completed on active duty or active duty for training must be completed in the reserve component. As directed in reference E, all new enlistment and commissioning contracts executed on or after 1 October 2020 for sailors under a 4-year active duty service obligation were written to include a minimum of 4 years active duty, followed by up to 2 years of CELRES service and 2 years of individual ready reserve service to reach the required 8 years total. So the way that I'm reading this is like, if you for some reason had a contract that was below 4 years, you were essentially going to get some kind of active reserve time to fill up the rest of your time on the reserves, which means the 2 weeks a year, which also means you got to do the fitness test, which means you also have to do the advancement exams, which means you also have to do the 1 week in a month, which means you still got to wear the uniform and not do drugs and all the other things, and you still abide by most of what would be expected from somebody in the military, besides the fact that it's not your active duty day job. Now, that policy is changing because the Navy dropped this only yesterday, where that is now going to be required maybe for people that have served 4 years or more. Let's get into it. They say policy. Any sailor who entered into service contract on or after 1 October 2020 who is separating from active duty service with less than 6 years time in service is subject to required CELRES service as determined by the needs of the Navy. I love they say needs of the Navy because we say that all the time, but it's always like, Navy, whatever you need, we'll just give it to you. We understand you're demanding, you're needy. The amount of time required in CELRES is equal to 6 years minus the amount of active duty service. Example, sailors who separate with 4 years and 6 months of active duty service may be required to serve 1 year and 6 months in the CELRES. After completion of 6 years time in service, sailors may be then transitioned to the IRR to serve the remainder of their military service obligation. Sailors transitioning from active duty service to the CELRES are granted a 2-year deferment from involuntary mobilization. We all understand that when you sign a military contract, it is 8 years total. Bing, bing, bing. The amount of active duty time is very crucial here because 4 years is like the standard. You get more technical skill sets, that you have more time in training. That could lead to a 5-year contract. That could lead to a 6-year contract as well. So if you already have a 6-year contract, you'd be fine in this perspective of this policy. However, if you have a 4-year contract, you have to kind of have this on your radar, but there's specifically more people that should have this on their radar than others, and that's because it depends on your job. For enlisted sailors required to transition to CELRES at the end of active obligated service or soft end of active obligated service, CELRES quota requirements will be automatically generated in the career waypoint system for adjudication by reserve community managers based upon the needs of the Navy. The quotas will be generated monthly from T-minus 10 months to T-minus 4 months to the sailor's EAOS, soft EAOS, to determine if CELRES service will be required. Sailors whose rating is not available in the selective reserve are not required to affiliate with the CELRES and may transition directly to the IRR. If a sailor in this category desires to affiliate with the CELRES, they may request a rating conversion to an available rating. So you guys hear that here, that essentially from 10 months to 4 months out of you leaving the military, you could say, I want to plan to go to college, I want to do this or that. You have to understand that this, from the reserve component, is not just a weekend job. As much as the military wants to sell it to you, I will be honest with you, I've spoken with enough reservists that will tell you you're going to do more than just your 2 days a month and then your 2 weeks a year. You will be required to do other duties, which may require answering your phone, emails, texts, things like that, in order to make sure you are still active in your unit and making sure things are running smoothly in between drill times and things like that. And while I'm going to sit here and agree that yes, these people that are going from active duty service are not going to be mobilized and they're still going to be able to stay where they're at, by the way, depending if their reserve station is by their house, you have to account for that because some of these drill stations could be hours away. Put that in your brain as well. The goalpost is moving, right? So there's a couple things I want to consider is like, yes, they see needs of the Navy, cool, but you know, they're promising 2 years of not being mobilized. Okay, we know that's no fly. But on top of that, if the goalpost has moved for something like this, what is to say that the goalpost and the requirements that are going to be expected of military members, if something pops off, will not change as well? I'm just going to put that out there for you guys because A lot of people forget that when you're part of IRR, the non-drilling reservists, that essentially you are going to have to still send an email or some kind of mail-in thing to say that you are still alive and kicking, and essentially you're not being activated, and understand that. So a lot of you guys that are looking at this policy, oh my God, what do I do? Check your rating, see if it's in the reserves, because it may sign you up for that. I mean, you need to understand that when you sign up for a contract like this anyway, that you are signing up for 8 years of this, and that could very much change. I just think a lot of people are so comfy in the idea that they would never have to serve beyond their requirement, but that's something I wanted to project here on the channel so you guys could understand what this means, because I think a lot of recruiters are not going to market this stuff or talk about it. Look at the lower ASVAB. Look at the idea that they're removing requirements for neck tattoos and things like that to get in. Look at the fact that they have now allowed higher tenure, meaning people can pretty much serve as long as they want. They're now requiring people to stay on longer than they actually were. As much as I try to avoid any warmongering or whatever else, but we've all talked about around the year 2027, 2028 that Taiwan could pop off and it's China. So I'm like, is this a reaction to that? Is this just we're really having a deficiency in recruiting of what's coming in, of the overall number? Like, I don't know if that number of the overall force manning that's needed, has that grown over the years because of these threats and these things that are on the horizon that we're looking at? I really don't know, but I'd love to talk to anybody that's up in the big wigs and be like, hey, is it what's coming in, or has the pool or pile of people that we need gotten larger because what we see coming up in congressional mandates? Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think about that. This comes with the second notice here, which is the warm handoff, which you're like, that sounds great, Nicky, a warm handoff, but it might mean the military is more in your business and you could possibly have people talk crap behind your back because of this new required policy that the Navy has pushed out. It's a bottom line up front. In accordance with Milper's Man 1320 Tech 307, commanders must ensure warm handoffs occur between losing and gaining command triads or leadership before a sailor with known challenges or issues is transferred. Regardless of type of orders, the warm handoff must consist of positive contact between both triads. At times, it may also be necessary for a leader, E7 or above, to physically escort the sailor to the gaining command. Requiring positive contact between both command triads ensures confirmation of the communication of any known issues or relevant details about the sailor to the gaining command. These circumstances or details are not limited to, but could include temporary additional duty exceeding 30 days, permanent change of station, PCS, limited duty, substance abuse, financial, disciplinary, humanitarian transfer, medical treatment requiring continued treatment, victims of violent crimes, examples of sexual assault or regular assault, any issues the sailor believes should be shared with the gaining command to ensure continuity of care, involvement in an open or ongoing harassment or prohibited discrimination complaint process, or family challenges/issues. What you need to know, this duty may not be delegated. The executive officer or equivalent assistant officer in charge, deputy chief of staff, and the senior enlisted leader, SEL, command master chief, chief of the boat, are responsible for executing the warm handoff procedures. The information sharing aspect of each warm handoff will be limited to those with a need to know in order to protect sailor privacy. This policy is intended to be in the best interest of the sailor and in support of mission readiness. Sailors who are transitioning, separating, retiring, affiliating with the reserve component, and are deemed to be at risk of not making a successful transfer must be introduced by the command to the necessary resources for post-separation assistance. I look at this policy and I'm like, somebody that doesn't need to know is going to find out at some point. I just know the military long enough to know that your legacy, your issues will be projected everywhere, right? And, I see this and I'm like, I understand why this is happening in regards to the basic idea of like continued leadership. So that way there's not a delay or fragmentation of what's going on. But like, shouldn't leadership already be asking these questions no matter what to the sailors? And I mean, it's up to the sailor if they lie about things or whatever else. First off, I look at here where it's like, if they have a sexual assault thing, they don't want the entire next command knowing, and I know it's a need to know basis, but a lot of these people are wanting to escape that image or that identity that could have came from the past command, and they probably want a fresh start without having that judgment, where that's kind of what I worry about with this, and I think this is a very sticky situation when it comes to that. And another thing here is like, if somebody was limited duty for a medical reason that is trying to get past it or maybe got better, it's understanding that people have different experiences with different sailors, right? Different leadership engages with junior sailors very differently, where I look at this and I'm like, why are we going to perpetuate this kind of game of telephone where the message could have been misconstrued, the leadership could have been different, the circumstantial evidence here could have been different, right? Where I'm like, let each leader engage that appropriately. And I would say, why are we doing this with a warm handoff? I feel like a lot of these processes and things like that, your command master chief and people that are your leadership should already be tapping in to kind of understand what product they're getting as far as evaluations, as far as, temporary duties and things like that are put in already databases that are out there. So I would say, why are we not having this in a digital format versus like some kind of phone call calling over to say, you want to know what this guy did for the past 3 years? However, I do also want to say, when I look at this, I understand the reason for this is to try and sustain people. As much as, people say the military is the lowest thing on the totem pole to join or do whatever, to get people to not have issues with family, to be ready to deploy, to not have financial issues, to not worry about that while they are deployed or distract them from doing the mission. Looking at harassment, which could distract people as well. Like, I understand the intent of this. I just feel like this is opening a culture where people are going to say that they could talk crap about that sailor and essentially lead off on a bad foot, even though they are getting a new start at another place as well. And I would say a lot of leadership, let me know what you think down below, because I hope that most people are going to look at this and say, I will look at each person individually as a fresh start and move forward, but I don't know how many people are going to be that non-biased. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think below. But as always, if you guys like what I cover here on the channel, make sure you guys always hit me up over on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, or down in the comments below. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.